Welcome to part 9, Ecology and Evolution. So this is where we're going to look at how ecosystems, if they change, organisms that have adaptations are able to survive, and that's called natural selection. Look at how energy flows. So those are our 3 key ideas. Our vocabulary is listed, and then our study questions. As we go through the study questions, we should touch upon all of the vocabulary. So the difference between biotic and abiotic. Remember, biotic means living. You put an A in front of it, means non-living. You should be able to give some examples of things that are living, and you can list anything that shows the characteristics of life. So that would be people. That's a good one. Fish, birds, squirrels. Right? Any of those are great examples. Non-living things. All right, these are things that you see out in the environment that aren't living. So that would be temperature, rainfall, right? pH. Temperature and pH are 2 things we've talked a lot about, so those are 2 good ones to know. How is a population different from a community and an ecosystem? All right, so the best way to describe population, community, and ecosystem is to use some examples. So if you look out our classroom window, you will see a population of squirrels. These are a group of animals that are alike, and so therefore they're called a population. You can also see a population of oak trees. It's a group of the same together. All right, so that's what population is. That population of squirrels interacts with other populations, and that's called a community. So we have our squirrels and our trees. All right, squirrels live in trees, squirrels eat the nuts off those trees, so they're interacting with each other. That's an example of what a community could be. There are obviously more things in our community out there. All right, we've got birds out there. That's another population that interacts. So community are interacting populations. The third one on here is ecosystem. Right, so the ecosystem is the interaction of the living and the non-living. So the interaction of biotic and abiotic. Right, so we listed some abiotic factors like temperature, rainfall, and pH. And now if we go back to our example of the squirrels and the trees, we could look at what if there's a drought? All right, so the drought is rainfall that impacts the trees. The trees might not grow as well. They might not have as many leaves. They might not have as many nuts. So that impacts the squirrels. All right, so we could go the other way around where we've got plenty of rain. So we've got plenty of trees, plenty of leaves for the squirrels to hide in, plenty of nuts. All right, but there's an interaction between the living and the non-living portion. When we look at how energy flows through ecosystems, right, we always begin with the sun. That is the primary source of all energy. That sun gets transferred to a plant. Right, so maybe that's our little oak tree that's starting to grow. All right, and as that plant grows, because it's making new cells through the process of mitosis, right, it gets new cells for growth. It's capturing sunlight, and when it captures that sunlight, that process is called photosynthesis. And that photosynthesis is creating a special molecule called glucose. Large molecules are made when you add glucose to a glucose to a glucose, and that includes starch and cellulose. That's all stored in the plant. And along comes our squirrel. Our squirrel. Our squirrel consumes that plant or the nuts from that plant. Now the energy moves from the plant to the squirrel. So the arrows show energy. And we talked about a 10% rule, that only 10% of what's available actually gets transferred. And then that squirrel gets consumed by a fox. So there's another population interacting. So that's a community in our ecosystem. So it completely moves down, and we typically draw it as a pyramid with our plant on the bottom, Our squirrel would be next, and then our fox would be up here. The plant is at the base because it has the most energy. Right. And the squirrel is the top because it has the least amount of energy. Right. So as we look at this little pyramid here, plants are usually the greatest number in any community or any ecosystem. Then we have things that eat the plants, and those are called our herbivores. And then the things that eat the squirrels are called carnivores, right? So plants are also known as producers. Right? They're also known as autotrophs, and everything above it, anything that consumes, is called a consumer. So anything that eats other things is called a consumer. This picture right here that I just drew, this is a pyramid, and it shows energy. And then this string right here is called a food chain. Okay, so the pyramid does a better job at showing the amount of energy, gets smaller as you go up, where a food chain shows you who eats who pretty simply. Now, this is a very specific pyramid. Sometimes you just see the word, instead of squirrel, you would see herbivore, right, instead of a specific squirrel in there. All right, so why are producers essential for life? Wrong button. All right, so why are these plants so important to life? Anyone know? Let me switch this over to these guys right here. Why are they important to life? Well, plants produce two really important things: oxygen and glucose. Those glucose can be stored as cellulose or starch. Those are really big molecules of glucose that are put together. Oxygen is essential for all life on Earth as we know it. Oxygen is used in aerobic respiration, right? That gives us a lot of ATP, and so is glucose. So these two things then go there, and our outcome is ATP, which is what we need to be able to make our cells do all the work that they do. So that's why producers are essential to life on Earth. If we go back to our squirrel example that I have up there, where the plant is eaten by the squirrel and the squirrel is eaten by the fox, what if you have a group of fast squirrels and you have a group of slow squirrels? Right? So who's going to be able to outrun the fox? Yeah, so these guys can outrun any fox, and these guys become fox food. All right, so these guys are gone. So now we've got a group of fast squirrels who then reproduce. And when they reproduce, they most likely will reproduce fast squirrels. So now all babies are fast squirrels. So this group of squirrels has an adaptation that allows them to be faster than their cousins, the slow squirrels. And that variation allows these squirrels to pass on their genetic code. And then in the future, all babies will have the ability to be fast. We're assuming a couple things here: that they're fast because it's a dominant trait. All right. Could be a dominant trait and they're fast. And therefore, the code is easily passed on if you are dominant for fast and you're homozygous or you're heterozygous. That little f, though, could continue to appear. So you could have brothers and sisters who are fast, and then they might have brothers or sisters who are slow within that same group. But it's the fast squirrels that are going to be eventually transferring their genetic code on. So if all of our organisms were the same at the start, the fox wouldn't have any food, and therefore the fox would disappear. So there's still going to be some variation that happens, especially if there's some type of mutation. So a mutation could occur in this population of fast squirrels that would change some of them not to be fast. And again, we could also have that recessive trait could reappear. So that way the whole population doesn't become fast, but overall more of them become fast over time. Um, this variation in our genetics occurs in meiosis, right, when we make egg and sperm. The last one on the list is explain how antibiotic resistance can develop in bacteria. All right, so typically, if you have a bacteria, right, in a dish and you add in antibiotics, they should all die. So 100% should die, right? That's the expected outcome. But we have some types of bacteria that don't die. When exposed to antibiotics. And they are termed resistant. So we may have had 100 bacteria in there in the original dish. And we would like 100% to die. But for some reason, that didn't happen. And let's just say like 10% of the bacteria live. That 10% now will go ahead and reproduce by mitosis, which means they're going to make an exact copy of themselves. And we're going to come back to this dish after maybe 24 hours later. And we're going to see the dish filled with 100 bacteria again. But they are all resistant to antibiotics. So you go and you throw in your antibiotic, and none die. Right? We now have a group of bacteria that are resistant to that antibiotic that we used up here at the top, all right, to try to kill them off. Didn't work. So now we're going to have to find another antibiotic that can combat this new genetic strain that is resistant to antibiotics. All right, so that covers all of the questions. Let's just go back and check vocabulary. There's a couple things that we didn't touch upon. Carrying capacity, limited resources, and I think you kind of have a good idea of competition. So if you end up with a very, very large squirrel population, they're going to compete for food. The population of squirrels is going to be limited based on how much food is there: food, water, shelter, space. So those are all our limiting factors. So these are things that limit the size of a population. That's food, water, shelter, space. This would be the same thing if we're looking down here at our bacteria because it's a population, right? So if the researcher gives them a specific dish size, that's as big as the bacteria will grow. Right? It won't get any bigger. It's a limited space. Or if the researcher limits the amount of food or water, that will also limit the population. Right. Let's see. I don't think there's anything else on there. Nope. I think that's everything. Sorry. Food web. Food web is actually not on the final, but it's interacting food chains that cross over each other. Okay. So that's it. If you have any questions, come see me. Thanks.